Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Welcome to Real Recovery. Bill Arnold on this side of the studio, and just across the way, a man who made it all the way to 6th grade without one felony conviction, George P. Fraser. Hello, George.
That is correct.
Yeah, conviction.
I have never been convicted of a felony.
That's true.
Anybody can get indicted. It's good to be here now. We got one of our favorite guests.
Favorite people, period.
Favorite people.
Yeah, we're going to bring him on, time permitting. We never know exactly how things are going to go. Things could go really well, and our guest never comes on.
That could happen tonight as well.
It could, because you've got that little sparkle in your eye tonight, George.
I do.
Yeah, because last week, I have to say, you did an amazing, outstanding job on the show. I thought you've never been better. And I heard from listeners that said the same thing.
That was me. I got
you?
I did a
okay.
few. But you know what's interesting, and I've always loved doing the show, as you know, being sober and able to do the show and safe. But when we go back and revisit our friends, and one of the things I think about when I'm at night and thinking about how great my life has gone, all the people that made it up, you and tonight, Tommy and Dave Johnson from last week
it was great.
Lost Sheep Ministries.
Yeah.
And you think about, gosh, I got to be a part of this, and I didn't want to do any of it. And so I'm really grateful.
That's it?
That's it. It's your show.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? And you think about that as we get older every year and we look back and reflect. I think it's really a gratitude deal for me.
There's no surprises. I mean, and we...
Well, hopefully not tonight.
No,
either.
not tonight. But we move in community, and this is how we build each other up. This is how we support each other. This is how we speak truth to one another. And this is how we maintain not only a great program of recovery, but a joy of the Lord.
It is. And tonight, or yesterday, whatever time it is, I was thinking about you had a connection here with Tom for me.
Yes.
And
tell that story, George. That's interesting.
Do you really want me to tell the story?
Yeah.
Well,
do you remember it?
Yes, I do remember it. It's not my best moment.
All right.
It turned out pretty well so far. You called me and said a friend of yours had gotten out of rehab and needed a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I was full with mentees. And you said, well, the guy played hockey. And I said, yeah. Good. You go for Grand Rapids and then captain of the University of Minnesota. I go, who was it? And you told me. I said, I remember that guy. He was really good, but I'm full. And sure, he's a great guy. And then you said he plays golf. And I said, who doesn't? And you said, well, he plays at a place called Spring Hill Country Club. Well, I had never gotten on there, so I know the Lord was leading me.
Sign me up.
And I said, have him call me.
Yeah.
So when he did, I told him that story verbatim, and he goes, you're the right guy for me.
Yeah.
And as he says, giddy up, it's been a good ride ever since.
Yeah, no kidding.
Full speed.
Yeah.
He's one guy that has been willing to do things the way they're laid out in recovery and in the Bible study. And as you know, I don't work with guys unless they're willing to go to an accountability meeting every week and go to a study on the 12 steps beforehand, and a Bible study. And the other thing that doesn't make me look good is he said he'd go to the Bible study, and I go, by the way, the entry fee for the Bible study is $500. So he showed up with a check, laid it on the table for everybody to see. And he goes, George, I don't know how to spell your last name, which really made me look good. And but the willingness there and the joy. I have always said that my recovery needs to be more fun than my using.
Yeah.
With Tommy, we've had to reel that back a couple times but the joy he brings into a room is like nobody else I know.
Yeah, no one lights up a room quite like him.
Yes.
And how many years sobriety, George? We're on a roll right now, you and me, so Tommy might not make the program. But anyway, go ahead. How many years
I
sobriety?
think Tommy was just 13 or 14.
Yeah, I think it's 14.
11?
11.
It was 11.
Right.
But he had 25 years before, which is remarkable, and we'll talk about that. That never happens.
Yeah. Now, we're going to cover a step before we bring Tom on. But also, George, I want to include Tom in the step discussion. But I look at all the steps, and I think Tom has really done an amazing job with every step. I think he wants to talk about step 1 today, but I see him in step 12 all day long.
Couldn't have said that better. And of course, that's carrying the message and practicing these principles in all our affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, when I tell my guys that I work with, I want you to meet Tom. I want you to meet my friends. And when you meet Tom, whether you're a lowly chemical dependency counselor or chairman of Cargill or Target, you're his friend. You're in the group.
Yep.
And there's nothing he won't do for people. And he's the kindest guy. I've never heard him say a bad thing about anybody. And I remember getting into our Bible study. Now we do it over the phone because we did that at COVID. And Tony Larson, who's in there, that's been on our show, said, "There's not a better Christian I know than Tom Rusty."
Wow, that's really impressive. Yeah, quite.
Well, he's out there a little. Tony's kind of out there, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But his level of joy and his ability to connect with anybody and everybody is so rare, and so really, I'm proud to call him a friend, and I'm proud to come alongside him, and I'm unbelievably thrilled that you two connected when you did. Was that 12 years ago, 11 years ago?
Yeah, and it was just amazing. I haven't seen Spring Hill in a while.
That's okay.
Because we played in the guest, and I played so bad, the member guest, he said, pick up that tee that says Spring Hill on it and save it because you won't be seeing another one. And it was a nice moment. No, when you work with other people, it helps you because the way I do it anyway is we're equals. And Tom has given me great feedback on things. He's one of my go-to guys.
Nice.
He's not quite at Gene Purdy's level athletics-wise.
I get it.
You know,
yep.
But pretty close. But it's been fun. So we wanted to talk about step 1. And we want to get...
so you know, we lost 99% of our audience with that last comment because no one knows who Gene is. We do. The three of us do, but that's all.
I think you don't even know who he is, do you, Ryan?
No, he doesn't know.
No, we didn't turn on his mic for obvious reasons. So step 1 is we admitted we're powerless over drugs and alcohol and our life's unmanageable. And really what we learn is we're powerless over everything. My next breath comes at the mercy of an all-sovereign God. Tom, you wanted to talk about step 1. What are your ideas on it?
And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. The only thing I'll add is George did cash the check from Bible study, so as surprised I was to write it, I was more surprised when it cleared.
Yeah.
Step 1, why that it starts with me is because for so long I played God, and the more his gifts he gave me, and I had success from those, I took credit for those, and my life never got better. He blessed me with some talent in sports, and pretty soon I thought I was better than I was and better than other people, and then he just kind of took those gifts away and put the rock of, for me, my addiction to alcohol is a daily addiction, and I think for me with my relationship with God, it's just a reminder that without him, I'm nothing. And so by recognizing this rock I have to carry and look to him to be my solution has given me a path for a much better life.
How do you walk that out on a daily basis, Tom?
You just start with gratitude more than anything else. I use the analysis or the analogy, with your recovery, George, or your battle with cancer and the uneasiness you have every 6 months when you go in to get the test and you turn it over to God, but there's that uneasiness. I look at ours as a daily reprieve, like a call from my doctor saying you're cancer free, or you're how can you continue that day without just that total feeling of joy that my cancer is free today. I've given that gift of sobriety. And so when you look at life, how can it not be just joy?
I love that. Is there anything you do in your life that you don't want to do it, but afterwards you're glad you did it?
Yeah, I mean, like playing golf with you that day. I mean,
Touche.
No. I think most things in life. It's so funny. We talk about this in our AA groups and our Bible study. George and I share a lot, and it seems so weird that the things I want to do the least, I get the most joy out of. It's so counterintuitive. It's easy to say, hey, let's go to a Gopher football game or go to a Gopher hockey game or go play golf. But it isn't like, hey, let's go to the food shelf or let's go help someone else. And it's always, when it's not in it for me, there's that pause. Yet when I get done, the joy I have is so much more different than walking out of a game with a win or loss. The fact that you could impact other people in the simplest way is just so much more rewarding. Yet I'm reminded every day I have to fight my self-indulgence.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's a program of action, right? Just thinking it doesn't really help.
No, for sure. And you talked about my first 20-some years of sobriety. Really, it was, I didn't really walk a sober life. I didn't drink, but I was very selfish in my recovery. And I think I left all of the joys and fruits of what I've experienced the last 11 years in my sobriety because of acting out and walking. My faith is better. I'm a better person. I'm helping more people. My family's better. My marriage is better. Just a number of things. And so it is. Life is action. And so is recovery. And certainly in my faith and my recovery, it's been, I've done a great deal.
Somebody starting out listening to our program that might be in and out of recovery, what would you share with them?
Get lucky enough to find the right guy to be your sponsor. I mean, Billy connecting me with George is just a God thing. And I think that's really critical, that you find someone, doesn't necessarily be the best friend or a brother or someone, but someone that really genuinely understands what you're going through and that you have a connection with. And for us, George and I have such passion for hockey, for golf and sports and just life in general. We're both full of life, that there was that immediate connection and then the willingness to just be vulnerable, to listen and do whatever he says. And so to me, the best thing I could offer is just listen to that sponsor, that advisor, that life coach, and heed his advice and just try it. You have nothing to lose because clearly your life isn't where you want it to be. Like Bob Bazance would say, no one goes into treatment on a winning streak. So,
And Tom, that would require some humility, wouldn't it, to sort of take someone's counsel and kind of do what he says that you should do. That takes humility.
It really does. And I think so often these people are always being talked down to because they're just not, they're obviously their life isn't working for them, and so everyone's trying to tell them what they need to do. And they're probably not wrong, but he's heard it enough. And so we use the phrase, it's a game of attraction rather than promotion in AA. And I think our approach when George sits down and talks to me, or the first guy, I kind of share my story where I'm at in my faith and in my recovery, and not saying, you need to be like me, but the takeaway is, geez, I kind of want what you have.
Right.
And that sounds a lot different than, you need to do this, things I'm doing, and have him look at it and say, that's something I want, not something that I need to go get. So
good. We're going to take a little break, but before we go to break, I do want to pass on a quote that I got from a friend this last week. The gentleman's name is Art Mandeline, and he said this: "We do not draw people to Christ by loudly discrediting what they believe, by telling them how wrong they are and how right we are, but by showing them a light that is so lovely they want with all their hearts to know the source of it."
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Yeah. We'll take a little break. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. Our special guest, Tom, is with us in studio. We've got Ryan on the board, so we are all ready to go. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Real Recovery. Bill and George. Our special guest, Tom, is with us in studio. George, off to a great start, as always, with a guest like Tom.
Can't miss with Tom.
Can't miss.
Tommy, where did you grow up, and what was your family life like, and how many people were in your family?
Yeah, it was quite a group. We Grand Rapids, Minnesota, so up north, about 3 hours. 11 of us, so a
Wow.
large Catholic family. And I was 9 of 11, so we started with 3 girls and ended up with 4 boys, and thank God that was the order. We might, some would still be in prison, so the younger group. So, but a very strong Catholic family. My mom and dad, the first thing they did on their first date was go to church. So their faith was very, very a foundation of our family.
Great date.
Yeah, it really,
That'd be a good-looking girl, huh?
yeah, big part of the church. So.
Oh, that's a great start, Tom. So what was your childhood like? What were you interested in? And did you go to church? And
Yeah, for sure. That wasn't an option. So, being a good Catholic, you knew the rules, and my mom was pretty militant about following them. So you went to church every Sunday for sure, and during Christmas and Easter week, you went most of the week. And as growing up, went to a private Catholic school, St. Joe's, and ironically, my 6th grade year, I went to church every day. I don't know, I had this sister, Jolene, that just kind of influenced my life. She was a little bit more, I just cultivated a relationship, but she drew me in, and so I had a really pretty strong walk that year. My childhood as a whole was more of my older brother. The next in line, my brother Bill was, pretty, he's kind of the one handpicked to go into the priesthood, and so he wasn't, kind of mom's favorite. But if I wasn't going to out-achieve him, so my way of getting noticed was to act out and do the opposite. And so, very 2 different paths in my growing up.
so were you kind of the class clown?
I acted out a little bit. I was more isolated. Like I said, us 4 boys, none of us are great at reading. And I think it's just because as parents, we didn't get a lot of lap time with my mom and dad sitting on their lap reading when you had 11 kids. And they have, 8 or 9 older. They're out somewhere else. And so you really had to deal with just, follow the rules. And if you didn't color outside the lines, you're fine. And if you did, you got punished. And so it was more isolation. We were in a big group, but in a lot of ways I felt isolated.
And I would say, Tom, that whether you were Catholic or Lutheran or Presbyterian, there are a lot of people that were committed to their church that made sure their kids were in church every week.
Oh yeah, no, we laugh, like my sister Carol, and her and I have a great sense of humor together. But they'd have their veil in their hair, and they'd have the white gloves. They'd have to go, and we're 3 blocks from the church, but we have to ride, take 3 cars for some reason, walking. That didn't make sense. I don't know, go figure that. But she was always the last to get to the box to grab her veil and gloves, and she goes, normally there'd be 2 left-handed gloves, so I'd wear one and carry the other one in my other hand, like I didn't have time to put it on. So the story there is, on the outside, it looked like a great, wonderful family, and on inside, it wasn't the house was burning, but you just had a lot of issues, and I think I was forced to deal with a lot of issues on my own because, with 11 of them, you can't have 11 people coming to the table with their issues. So you had to kind of, it was, and I don't want to give it a bad, we have a wonderful relationship. All 11 of us get along incredibly well. So that's a God thing with my mom and dad, setting that tone for us. And we absolutely love getting together. But, it was, life was just kind of a challenge for everybody. And for me, following the Catholic rules was not always the easiest. And as I got older, I got more independent and kind of walked a different path.
Tom, did you find that you became a problem solver, though? Because you had to solve problems on your own. And now today you're this brilliant businessman. So I go, all right, there was something that was gained in a significant way by this.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because out of my 11 siblings or 10 siblings, 7 of us either own our own business or married someone who has. And so I think, and my dad owned 2 companies. And so I think there was an entrepreneurial piece, but I never thought of it in that way. I think you're absolutely right that there was that level of independency and then problem solving. That would kind of prepare you for that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think it's really remarkable, all the brothers and sisters that I've met, how successful as people they are.
One right after the other.
Just stunning. Yeah. So when did you start playing hockey and sports? How old were you?
I kind of just followed my brothers to the rink. There was 6 of us, and I was in the middle, and I was probably 4 when I, put on my first pair of skates, and I didn't get my own pair till I was probably a bantam, so you wore hand-me-downs all the way through. And kind of a funny story, my brother Bill and I played on the same team most of the time all the way up, and we only had one set of elbow pads and one cup for the two of us, and so you had to kind of do paper, scissors, rock, who got what, And so Coach Ted Brill, who's just an awesome guy, was a peewee. He's like, "Tommy, you got to get out and penalty kill." I'm like, "I can't. Bill's got the cup today." He's like, "You're kidding me. Tell your parents." So, today we're spending $600 on hockey sticks, and we couldn't put the equipment together. So it's kind of funny, but. It just was part of it. My dad grew up in a small town in North Dakota, and he was a pretty good athlete as well, but no hockey or at all. But in Grand Rapids, I was fortunate enough to play at a time where Iron Range hockey was kind of the Friday night lights of the Cowboys in Dallas in football. The identity of every town was really identified by their hockey team, whether, with the Eveleth and International Falls, and you go Greenway and Hibbing and Virginia up and down the range. There's so much history. So kind of going to the games where everyone, it was sold out, it was easy to get hooked on hockey for sure.
So that was northern Minnesota, and you would later go on to become captain of the University of Minnesota Gophers, and 3 other brothers were captains of college teams. You went University of Minnesota, Duluth, Notre Dame, and St. John's. Very successful. So this helped you in life because you were good. You had a lot of friends. At what age did you start using, Tom?
I think I had my first beer in 10th grade. I can kind of think back. It was like March of my sophomore year. And I think that was the first time I ever gotten drunk, actually. And but I remember drinking for that first time and how it made me feel. And it was very euphoric. Like, this is kind of a game changer.
It's always interesting to me, Bill, that we can always remember the first time we got high or got a little drunk. Maybe not our first drinks, but when that got the feeling, my guess is you knew you were going to be doing it again.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it just clicked. I mean, I think we all, as people growing up, you are your worst critic, and we constantly judge our insides against other people's outsides. And so alcohol filled that hole pretty fast for me, and was there was just great peace and joy in something that was not really good for me in the long run.
So you kind of held it together through high school?
I did. The drinking wasn't allowed, and so my mom and dad ran a pretty strict house, so you had to be kind of elusive at best. And so I was fortunate enough, or unfortunate, like in many things when you make mistakes, the sooner you fall, the better, because the longer you get away with it, the farther the fall at the end. And so I got through high school drinking in and out here and there, not a ton, but enough where it wasn't constructive, and I could see a pattern going.
So you go to the University of Minnesota freshman year, full ride hockey scholarship, coming off probably the best high school player in the state at the time in Minnesota, Bill, which is huge. And you're going to the big city, and how'd you do it? How'd you handle that?
Having all that independence, it was, it was Katie bar the door, because, it just gave me the freedom. Now you're old enough to drink. You're on your own. You don't have to answer to anyone. I was fortunate enough to play on a really good team and have a really successful season. And so all this freedom and independence was combined with success in my mind of what was good. So to stop and say, geez, is this the right path for me? Am I doing the right thing? I probably knew deep down I shouldn't be drinking as often as I do, but I just continued to... My life hadn't experienced enough setbacks to force me to take pause or others to step in.
There's a great story you told about going home to see your dad after your first semester of college.
Do you want to hear that?
Oh, I love this story.
Oh, it's just terrible. So anyway, you had mentioned my brother Bill and John played at UMD and Notre Dame, and both were kind of honor students and could handle the the curriculum as well as the demand of playing college athletics. And so we were on quarters back in the U in the early 80s. And so in spring quarter, I only took 3 classes versus 4 because I had kind of had enough to stay eligible, which was really the focus versus trying to make the dean's list. So I think I had Greek mythology, I had Psych 101, and some other class. And so I didn't have a great quarter. I was getting some of the work done. I thought I'd be fine and did okay, but I clearly was absent more than I was present. And so being on scholarship, I'd usually get my report card to me at the dorm, but they sent it up to my dad's office in Grand Rapids. And so I get a call to swing by his office after work. I'm working at the paper mill, and so I'm like, well, this isn't going to be good because he doesn't usually ask for that. So I get there, and he shows me this report card that's got 3 grades, and I got a C and 2 Ds, and I can see I'm a little bit of a box with Billy and Johnny being able to pull it off. He says, so what do you got to say for yourself? And so I'm thinking, you know what I'm thinking, Dad? I'm spending way too much time on that one class. I said, this is nuts. I got to spread myself out. And he's kind of, I saw his belly shake a little. I like, I think I got him. And he's like, we're not going to have this conversation. I go, no, loud and clear, Dad. I hear you, loud and clear.
And you didn't. You got pretty good grades after that.
Well,
fairly good.
I stayed eligible. I did all right.
I love that story.
Did
you cut back on your drinking, though, or did it?
No, it does continue to get more.
Were you going to church while you were? Okay, so we've left that aside, and our drinking's increased. Looking back on it, at what point do you think you became like a functional alcoholic?
I think it was right my freshman year in college. I mean, it was drinking 30 days straight, not... And I wouldn't be a guy to get up in the morning and drink, but when it was, happy hour or, in spring after, when you don't have hockey, let's go grab a 12-pack and play, backyard football or let's go to the bar. So when the window was there, I jumped in it pretty fast. And so it was more when I started, not so much when I started, just when I started, I didn't stop till I was done.
So this quickly ran its course.
Yeah, big time.
And some of your friends got together. Was it your senior year or was it after that?
It was after that. So I had finished my career at the U, and then I played a year over in Europe, in Germany, and played for the North Stars farm team and Islanders in Indianapolis. And so I was back here, started a career in the insurance business, and then 3 years into that is when, I had a DUI, and then the walls started closing in.
So at what point was there this moment where you said, if I don't stop, this is just going to get worse and worse?
I remember walking into St. Mary's. This would have been November on my birthday in 1989. And I just kind of, after had a mini intervention with some of my brothers and friends, and it was like, let's just go do an assessment, And so when I walked through the doors at St. Mary's, I just kind of broke down like the gig's up, and it's this feeling of surrender hit me.
All right, we'll take a little break. We'll come back and continue to hear Tom's story. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. It is time for more Real Recovery. George P. Fraser and myself, Bill Arnold, is here with Tom, and we are hearing his amazing story. And it's really remarkable. He finally reaches a point where treatment has to take place, and he says the gig is up, and he starts treatment, and then it produces an incredible long run of sobriety. But there's still something not 100% in place.
Well, I think, one thing that's very easy to overlook, Bill, and this is true, he was the guy. Every kid in the state of Minnesota who played hockey wanted to be captain of the Gophers. This guy has. He goes down to school. He's really good. He's playing pro hockey. I think if I could play hockey like you did, Tom, I would have not gotten sober. I would have died. And so the fact that somebody can have the humility of going through a treatment center like St. Mary's, which is in Minnesota, and acquire the humility and go out. And I think your mom said something to you during Family Week that kind of changed this for you.
Yeah, it was. Back then, Family Week was very different. They had, in my case, 11 siblings or 10 siblings, and a good friend of mine was part of the group. They put you in the center of the room, and you're surrounded, and each of them kind of take a piece of flesh, and so that whole, being beaten down, and then sitting at lunch that day, it was a cafeteria lunch, and so my dad got up to get something, and my mom looks at me and says, "You better not do this to your dad again." And it was just like that Catholic guilt again of, I'm like, I got my hands full, but, I get it. And so I think in a lot of ways that week and that comment probably kept me sober a long time.
What were you doing to stay sober?
I'm just not drinking.
That's pretty obvious, isn't it? Yeah, let's just quit.
Which didn't. It solved some things. I wouldn't get a DUI, but at the same time, I had DUIs in life. Is a good way to put it.
Were you going to church?
No. Well, I guess a little bit. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. It's very remarkable. Some people just quit using, Bill, which I could never get my hands around. And it's amazing that knowing you, that you could do that. That had to be a God thing, whether you give him credit or not.
Tom, you must have felt a little invincible with the gifts you had, the talent you had, the athletic ability, the entrepreneurial spirit. That's an invincible quality that now you have to humble yourself to say, no more lifestyle, because that was a lifestyle change.
Yeah, big time. I mean, and George and I were visiting earlier, and it was one of the greatest gifts of not being a successful professional hockey player, because I think had God allowed that, or I had that success, I would have felt even more immune and listened less.
Right.
And my life would be very different today. So I always share that my greatest sense of accomplishments were also followed by my greatest setbacks in life and hardship. And I think that was God's way of leaning in and just saying, I've given you a lot, but I can take them away today.
Mm-hmm. All right, 25 years of sobriety. I can't imagine there's going to be a relapse in this story. But I think there is.
We might as well end the show right here.
That's what I mean. 25 years, that's amazing. But
it's going good.
It's going great.
I'm sure the job was good.
Yeah, things were working. What happened?
Yeah, a lot of things were going well. I went to church a little bit, certainly more than when I was drinking. I got married and with children wanted to set kind of a path for them. So there was that part of my life. But there was a incredible amount of selfishness in my recovery, and which is very different than my path today. I took this position that if I'm giving this up, this drinking that I'm really should be able to do and I can't now do, I'm going to entitle myself to everything else. And so that's a very slippery slope that eventually just, again, took me down.
So you really switched addictions, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was just and easy to do. I mean, golf became a big part of my life, and just work, just everything I did was what's in it for me, and not going into AA rooms and working with other people, not having my faith where it should be, and I was really set up for a fall.
And so things are going really well. Your career took off. Family's good. So how did you go out of your way to mess it all up? Because that's what we do. We don't have God in there, right?
Yeah.
I got this. I'll let you know if I need you. Yeah,
and I think for me, I had both of my knees replaced in 2009. And I was on oxycodone, which not going to AA, didn't realize this could be a slippery slope. And because it was prescribed by my doctor, I thought it was no different than Tylenol or Advil. And I was advised after a few years of a friend of mine just saying, hey, you got to be careful with that. I've had a friend who worked for me overdose, which I was completely oblivious to, and this would have been 2010. So in 2011, I remember the time and the day we took a business trip to Dubai, and I just said, I'm going to drink on this trip. And I picked up my first beer and kind of, it's one of those things where even though it seemed immediate, I could see where my steps were leading me to that point. And for the next 2 years, I just drank on and off, more and more, never drunk, never, maybe 1, 2, 3, maybe once a week, then twice a week, then once a month, but it kept escalating to the point where my wife was like, this, you're drinking now. What are you doing? And you're hiding it. And so she put together an intervention that brought me to treatment.
Those are always fun, aren't they?
Yeah, another party. Yeah, that is. Yeah, that was hard because this time, my children were there, and that was a big one. So that if I always say, if I didn't have the strength to go for me, I could go for them, and so they're a big part of that.
So you're kind of a business partner there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one's not good. Big guy.
Oh, no, he wasn't at the intervention, but no, but he is aware of it.
So now you're going to start growing in your faith, and now you got to deal with George. Because you've got
he's got to go to rehab first.
Well, no, but after rehab.
Because I couldn't deal with somebody like that.
No. We're getting on the other side of rehab right now.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're starting to walk out sobriety once again, but there's still something missing or something that you want more of, and this is when you meet George, and he becomes your mentor.
He did. That was the day the game changed. That was the first AA meeting I remember walking into. I think I did a couple coming out of St. Mary's in '89, but the first time certainly in 20-some years. And George actually got a medallion that day from our good friend Ed, and I had to find him at the depot at an 8 o'clock Saturday morning meeting, and that's the first time I had gone to an AA meeting and really had the chance to meet with George and Ed. But George and I, we just clicked. It was, it's for anybody that hasn't gone into an AA room as an alcoholic or an addict, that door's pretty heavy to pull open.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I got in there and I spent 5-10 minutes with George and I heard the, things Ed shared with George getting his medallion that day, I just kind of looked at him like, that is something I want for me.
I remember going out to eat with you, and I remember not ever laughing that hard in my life. And the joy and just that it was so at ease. And what I remember a week later is we went out, and, I'd talked with Bill. Bill knew you really well, gave you highest recommendations. And I asked you about your business, and you told me, and I thought, okay, this guy has another gear. Billy, you know that. I mean, great athlete, funny, but super smart, too. And whatever you asked me, you did. And your concern for other people, I think you became friends with Ed right there. It just started growing, and we look back, Bill, and I'm so grateful for God in that it seemed effortless. I mean, it's been funny.
Yeah.
A lot of really funny things. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about a couple things that weren't funny, where nobody but God could have walked into it and turned it around. And it was painful to watch, and I had a front row seat.
I like it. Let's find out after the break exactly what you're talking about, George, because I have no idea. But we'll find out. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. We are back with Real Recovery, Bill and George. We've got Tom telling an incredible story of his walk through sobriety and through relapse. And George, now we're at a point where he is really growing in his faith and committed to Bible study and to meetings and everything else. It's remarkable.
So, Tom, what were you doing when you started this chapter of recovery?
I after just sitting down with you, we really just jumped in and you had, 3 things that you expected of me, and that is to go to meetings, read the big book, eventually get, sponsor other people, But really, it was those three things, and with the Bible study becoming more and more of a focus of our relationship. It's like sobriety's there, but it's kind of like God is is kind of in the lead of all of our Bible studies and our AA. It just it's created that bond.
So God had a plan for you to get sober, and there were some immediate benefits for you: peace of mind, gratitude. Tom's doing well. Bunch of new friends, one of which who later became a Christian. But there was a rocky road ahead that was very painful. Can you tell us that story?
Again, like I think God's plan, let's get my footing there. And I shared earlier how my children looking me in the eye like you need to go to treatment and giving me the strength to go. Especially my daughter Clara, who was suffering with her addiction at the same time. And she was probably in her 18, 19, 20 years old and really struggling in her recovery, or not in her addiction, I should say. And so having a front row seat, like you had mentioned before, Joe, I often remember just talking to George, what can I do? I can see this addiction just getting worse and worse with drugs and the damage she's causing herself. And I remember specifically, he said that we just got to keep her alive, whatever that looks like.
I remember that. A lot of prayer, and you're helpless.
Yeah, that was probably the most, epiphany for me. There's nothing I can do with all the gifts I've been given other than just turning it over to God and put it in His hands. The power of prayer for her. And I'm often reminded, just having the joy of looking at where she is today, of how I would have sold her short if I would have asked for my prayers to be answered for her versus what God had given her today. The impact she's having on other people's lives in recovery and just in general is a gift I could have never imagined that she would be able to offer me and so many others.
So you just wanted her to get sober and stay alive. What were God's plans?
Interesting enough, it led me to opening 2 sober homes for women with a partner of mine, Pat Flanagan. I just saw a huge need in that space, just with Clara's experiences in some of these sober home facilities. There was a lack of sober homes for women, and I think just the quality of what they were offering. And so it really gave me a chance to lean in there. And so I think that was a God thing, pulling me in there to help. And then seeing Clara in her sobriety, getting sober, and now working closely with our Lionhouse sober homes, working with these women. And we have probably 20 women that we're taking or are in our care for each month, and she works with them every week.
Stunning.
It's so significant that this is happening, and that this is being driven by the opportunities, Tom, that you've helped to create, and then the ways in which God is working in her life. And probably wouldn't have ever happened if Dad wasn't going to be sober and faith-filled.
Well, that is, but that's not all. There's more.
Really? You sound like a late-night pitchman.
Well, that's kind of what this is. But the person he's partnering with, early in Tom's sobriety, he got a phone call from a family member that this person needed help, and Tom went out of his way to go get him, went up a staircase, and wound up getting this person into rehab. He didn't get sober right away, like most of us don't, but he did, and then he's partnering with Tom in these sober houses for women. And you watch that and go, okay, we just wanted to get sober and keep the family and stay out of jail and blah, blah, blah. And look what God does with it. It's stunning to me.
Yeah, that is amazing. I mean, I specifically remember I've never been on a 12-step call or been asked to. And so this was fairly early in my recovery. And before, when I had 20-some years, no one knew I was, the people in the rooms wouldn't know who to call because I wasn't in the room. So I was the worst 12-step guy in the game. So when I got the call, I was playing in a golf tournament at Bear Path, and we had a Saturday night dinner that night with my wife, and I'm like, okay, I got to shift gears. We're going to go do this. Pat's wife called me, so I immediately called George. It's like, George, what do we do? He drops everything. I'll meet you over there.
He wasn't doing anything, so there's nothing to drop.
That's true.
I was dying at the time.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So I was doing that.
The dying part.
Watching TV and dying.
yeah.
So, give me some credit. Yeah.
So the funny thing is, George talked about, we're walking up the steps, and Patrick had been up in his bedroom all day drinking, and everyone was out of the house, and his wife was concerned. She didn't know what's going on. And so as we're walking up the steps, George looks at me, and he goes, does he own a gun? And I'm kind of laughing, but he's done on a number of these things, which is very real. I said, I don't know, but just stay behind me. We'll keep going. And so sure enough, we got up there, and George was really good taking the lead, and we did get him into detox. And like I said, it wasn't a one and done. It rarely is a straight line of success, but the impact Patrick's had on so many men and women, it's just it's incredible, and he still does it today, and we're expanding, and it's just, you look at where this started and where we are, it's just only God could have pulled it off.
Mm-hmm. Tom, what we always say in this program is God doesn't save us and help us get sober without having a job for us to do. And when I look at what he's done in your life and Patrick's and Clara, it just lines right up. And if you're struggling with getting sober, remember, it's not about you. It's a lot bigger than that. But it starts with you getting sober, making a commitment for Christ, and finding some people that are like-minded that do what you need to do. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just do what they're doing. And pray to God for the power, strength, and desire to do it, and the willingness. And what happens, you won't believe what happens. And this show that we got to see, Bill, in real time, live and in color, it really helps my faith.
Yeah. So, Tom, just with a couple minutes we have left remaining, if people are disappointed that their loved ones have relapsed, maybe you would give a word of encouragement.
Yeah, I think like everyone, my wife wasn't, where do you turn for help? Because most people aren't equipped to deal with an alcoholic or an addict at some level. And so there are people out there, believe me, you can't meet someone today that hasn't have an alcoholic or addicted brother, father, uncle, grandfather. And so everyone's been affected by it, and there's a lot of resources available. And so I would just say, hey, raise your hand. You're not alone in the battle more than anything else. There's a lot of people that want to help and can understand where you're at and what you're doing, and to try to take it on alone and think no one else knows what's going on. That was the whole Catholic shame thing. I didn't want people to know. And when I walked into St. Mary's that day in 1989, I just kind of collapsed like, geez, the gig's up. Now I have to own it because everyone's going to know Tom Rothstein's in treatment.
Yeah. There again, there's another dose of real humility, and that's oftentimes a big step that we need to take.
I think we can look at it. God did for us what we didn't want to do. And I know you pray a lot. And do you have a favorite scripture that you like? Because we've talked about John 10:10, where it says the thief comes to kill, murder, and destroy, and the Son of Man came to give us life and give it to us abundantly. I don't know anybody who lives a more abundant life than Tom.
Yeah, I'm not going to put him on the spot because we're out of time. So we'll just say, Tom, thank you so much for doing the show. It's really great having you on. You were on 10 years ago, and now you've come back with a remarkable story. And
in another 15, we'll have you back.
Yeah, God has done amazing things in your life. So thank you for spending time with us tonight. That's all the show we have, another award-winning show of Real Recovery. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.